You know that feeling when someone suddenly starts doing something differently around you? Not just changing a habit or picking up a new routine, but actually reshaping the way they communicate, the way they show up, the way they reach for you. There's something happening right now in your life that's so tender, so intentional, so specific to you that it might take your breath away when you really stop to notice it. Someone is learning you. Not just getting to know you in that casual, surface-level way we often experience with people. They're studying the blueprint of your heart. They're paying attention to what makes you feel seen, what makes you feel valued, what makes you feel absolutely cherished. And here's what's remarkable, they're not doing this because you asked them to. They're not following some relationship advice they read online. They're doing this because something in them has shifted so profoundly that making you feel loved has become more important than their own comfort, their own habits, their own default ways of existing. This is about transformation. Real transformation. The kind that doesn't happen because someone wants to impress you for a moment, it happens because they've decided that reaching your heart is worth every uncomfortable adjustment, every moment of learning something new, every time they have to move outside what comes naturally to them. If you've been noticing small changes lately, the way they're texting you differently, the way they're remembering little details you mentioned weeks ago, the way they're showing up in exactly the ways that matter most to you, you're not imagining it. This is intentional. This is them cracking the code of what speaks directly to your soul, and then having the courage and devotion to actually speak that language. And I need you to understand something powerful right from the start. When someone does this, when someone actually learns the specific dialect of love that your heart understands best, it's one of the most profound acts of devotion you'll ever experience. Because it means they're not trying to love you the way they love everyone else. They're not offering you generic affection. They're customizing their entire approach to connection around who you actually are. This video is for you if you've been feeling something shift. If you've been catching glimpses of someone trying in ways they've never tried before. If you've been wondering whether it's real, whether it's lasting, whether this change in them is actually about you, or just a temporary adjustment they're making. Stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through will help you recognize just how significant what's unfolding really is. We're going to explore the layers of what it means when someone learns your love language, not just intellectually, but experientially. What it reveals about their feelings for you. What it signals about where this is headed. And most importantly, how to honor both their effort and your own heart as this beautiful, sometimes vulnerable thing continues to unfold between you. Because here's what I'm seeing, there's a sacredness to being loved in the language you understand best. It's not about them being perfect. It's about them paying attention. It's about them caring enough to notice what lights you up, what settles your nervous system, what makes you feel like you can finally exhale and be yourself. If what I'm describing resonates with something you're experiencing right now, do me a favor and drop a heart emoji in the comments. Let's create a space where we can acknowledge this beautiful thing that's happening. Before we go deeper, I want to acknowledge those of you who've been following along, engaging with these videos, sharing your stories. Your presence makes this possible. If this content has been meaningful to you and you'd like to support what we're creating here, there's a super thanks option below. It helps me continue dedicating time to these conversations about love, connection, and the intricate ways we find each other. But whether you can contribute or not, I'm grateful you're here. Now, let's talk about what's really happening when someone learns to speak your heart's native tongue. There are moments that reveal everything. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but small, almost quiet adjustments that show you someone has been paying attention in ways you didn't realize. Maybe they've started writing things down. Little notes to themselves about things you've mentioned. That restaurant you said looked interesting 3 weeks ago. They just suggested it for your next date. That book you briefly referenced in passing. They bought it and started reading it. That specific way you like your coffee that most people get wrong. They remembered, and they got it right without you having to repeat yourself. Or maybe it's something deeper than remembering facts. Maybe you've noticed that when you're stressed, they've stopped trying to fix everything and started just sitting with you. If your love language is quality time, they're suddenly protecting evenings with you instead of always being available to everyone else. If your love language is words of affirmation, they're learning to say out loud the things they used to just think. If it's acts of service, they're taking care of little things before you even ask. If it's physical touch, they're reaching for your hand more often, or pulling you close in that specific way that makes you feel safe. They're learning the difference between loving you in theory and loving you in practice. And this is where it gets powerful. This kind of learning requires vulnerability from them. Because it means admitting that their default way of loving wasn't quite reaching you. It means being humble enough to realize that good intentions aren't always enough, that love requires adaptation, attention, sometimes even study. Think about what that means about their character. Anyone can love you when it's easy. Anyone can show affection in the ways that come naturally to them. But to actually reshape your instincts, to retrain your automatic responses, to learn a new language of connection? That takes someone who's serious about this. That takes someone who's in it for the long term. I'm watching them make adjustments that most people never make. They're catching themselves mid-sentence and rephrasing things in ways that land better with you. They're asking questions, sometimes directly, sometimes by observing your reactions, about what makes you feel most loved. They're noticing when something they did made your face light up, and they're doing it again. They're tracking what makes you withdraw, and they're consciously avoiding those patterns. This isn't manipulation. This is devotion. Because here's the distinction: someone who's manipulating you learns your triggers to exploit them. Someone who loves you learns your language to honor you. You can feel the difference. Manipulation feels like control. This feels like coming home. They're studying the architecture of your emotional world, not to navigate it for their benefit, but to meet you there. To stop making you translate everything you need into their language. To actually come to where you are and speak in ways you understand without explanation. Let me paint this more specifically. If you're someone who feels loved through quality time, they're not just physically present anymore, they're present. Phone away. Attention on you. Not distracted, not halfway engaged. They've realized that giving you time isn't enough, it's about giving you their full presence in that time. If words of affirmation are your language, they're learning to be specific. Not just, I love you, though that matters, but, I love the way you handled that difficult conversation, or, I was thinking about how patient you were in that moment, and it made me appreciate you even more. They're giving you words with texture, with detail, with thought behind them. If acts of service speak to you, they're not waiting to be asked anymore. They're anticipating. They're noticing when you're overwhelmed and quietly taking things off your plate. They're learning that for you, love is spelled TME and EFFORT, and they're investing both. If physical touch is your primary language, they're learning the difference between casual contact and intentional connection. They're not just touching you when they want something, they're reaching for you when you need grounding. They're learning your body's signals, when you need space versus when you need closeness. If receiving gifts matters to you, they've figured out it's not about the price tag, it's about the thought. They're giving you things that show they've been listening. Little surprises that say, I saw this and thought of you, or, I remembered you mentioned wanting this. Drop a word in the comments that describes how it feels when someone gets your love language right. Just one word. Let's see what we're all experiencing. And here's what makes this even more profound: they're probably not perfect at it yet. They're learning. You might catch them stumbling, trying something new that doesn't quite land right, then adjusting again. That awkwardness? That's beautiful. That's them caring enough to be uncomfortable while they figure you out. Most people give up at the first sign of difficulty. Most people decide that if love doesn't flow effortlessly in their natural style, it's not meant to be. But this person in your life? They're doing the opposite. They're staying in the discomfort. They're learning your language even when it doesn't come naturally. They're choosing you over their own convenience. Do you understand how rare that is? In a world where most people want everything to be easy, instant, automatic, someone is choosing the harder path because it leads to you. They're choosing to grow, to stretch, to become multilingual in love because your heart is worth the effort. And listen, this might be bringing up stuff for you. Maybe you're someone who's been in relationships where you constantly had to translate your needs. Where you had to explain over and over what made you feel loved, and still never quite felt understood. Where you learned to accept breadcrumbs and call it enough. Where you convinced yourself that you were just too much or too specific in what you needed. This person is showing you that you were never too much. You just hadn't met someone willing to learn your language yet. Before we go further into what this means spiritually and emotionally, if this message is touching something deep in you and you're able to support this work, the super thanks option is there. It allows me to keep creating these deep explorations of love and connection. Grateful either way. What you're experiencing isn't just someone being nice. It's someone being devoted. And there's so much more happening beneath the surface of these changes than you might realize. Stay with me, we're about to go deeper into what this transformation actually reveals. Let's talk about what's happening inside them that you can't see. Because these external changes, the adjustments in how they communicate, how they show up, how they love you, they're just the visible part of a much deeper internal shift. Something changed in how they see you. Not just, I like this person, or this person makes me happy. Something more fundamental. At some point, your happiness became connected to their own sense of peace. Your comfort became something they think about when you're not around. The idea of you feeling unseen or unloved in their presence became unacceptable to them. This is what happens when someone moves from casual affection to genuine devotion. Their internal priorities reorganize. Making you feel loved stops being an item on a checklist and becomes a filter through which they process their own behavior. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. They're in the middle of their day, working, handling responsibilities, living their life, and something you said weeks ago suddenly pops into their mind. Maybe it was something about how you feel most connected when someone remembers little details. So now, in this random moment, they're making a mental note about something you mentioned wanting to try, or something that's been stressing you out, or something that would make you smile. This is happening more than you know. You're existing in their awareness even when you're not in their presence. Not in an obsessive way, but in the way that happens when someone becomes important to your sense of wholeness. They're carrying you with them, thinking about how to reach you better, planning little ways to speak your language more fluently. And here's what this reveals, they're not doing this out of obligation. You can't fake this level of attention. You can't force yourself to constantly think about how to love someone better unless that desire is genuinely rooted in something real. This kind of sustained effort only comes from authentic care. They're making choices that cost them something. Maybe they're naturally more reserved with words, but they're pushing past their discomfort to tell you what they appreciate about you because they know that's how you receive love. Maybe they're someone who values independence and alone time, but they're carving out more intentional space for you because quality time is what makes you feel secure. Maybe acts of service don't come naturally to them, but they're learning to show love through action because they've noticed how your shoulders relax when they take care of something for you. Every adjustment they're making is a small death of their ego. It's them saying, my way isn't the only way. My comfort isn't more important than your heart. Think about relationships you've had, or witnessed, where someone loved you, or claimed to, but insisted on doing it only in their way. Where they said, this is how I show love, take it or leave it, without any curiosity about how you receive love. Where your needs were treated as unreasonable simply because they were different from what came easily to them. This person is doing the opposite. They're humbling themselves. They're admitting they have something to learn. They're treating your heart like it's worth studying, worth understanding, worth adjusting for. Do you know how much maturity that requires? Most people are so defended, so protective of their own way of being, that they'd rather lose connection than admit they need to grow. But this person has decided that keeping you is worth more than maintaining their comfort zone. Now, pay attention to how you're responding to this. Because there's something happening in you too, isn't there? When someone loves you in your language, it does something to your nervous system. You start to relax in ways you didn't even know you were tense. The hypervigilance that comes from constantly translating your needs starts to soften. You begin to feel like you can show up fully without having to manage how you're perceived. This is what safety feels like. Not the absence of conflict or challenge, but the presence of someone who's willing to meet you where you are. And that safety is unlocking something in you. Maybe you're more open than you've been in years. Maybe you're catching yourself being more playful, more vulnerable, more expressive. Maybe walls you built so carefully are coming down without you consciously deciding to lower them. That's what happens when someone speaks your language. You stop expending energy on translation and defense, and you start actually experiencing the connection. If you're feeling this kind of safety with someone for the first time in a long time, type, "finally," in the comments. Let's acknowledge this moment together. But let's also be honest about the fears that might be coming up. Because when someone starts loving you this well, it can be terrifying. You might find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop. Wondering when they'll get tired of the effort. Questioning whether this is sustainable or just a honeymoon phase that will eventually fade. Those fears make sense. If you've been hurt before, if you've watched someone's effort diminish over time, if you've been disappointed by promises that didn't last, of course you're protecting yourself. Of course you're skeptical. But let me offer you a different lens. What if this is what it actually looks like when someone is ready? Not perfect, not finished growing, but ready to do the work that real love requires. What if you're not witnessing a temporary performance but the beginning of a pattern that will deepen over time? Because here's what I want you to notice. They're not just learning your love language in the exciting early stages. Watch how they handle the mundane moments. The Tuesday afternoons when nothing special is happening. The times when you're stressed or not at your best. The moments when loving you requires patience or sacrifice without any immediate reward. Are they still speaking your language then? Are they still making the effort when it's not convenient? Are they adjusting even when you're not actively praising them for it? If yes, that tells you something crucial. This isn't performative. This is integrated. It's becoming part of who they are in relationship with you. There's also something happening with their identity. When someone learns your love language, they're not just picking up a new skill, they're expanding their capacity for love. They're becoming someone who can love beyond their default settings. They're growing into a more flexible, more attentive, more generous version of themselves. And they're doing this because of you. Not because you demanded it or manipulated it, but because loving you made them want to be better at loving. You inspired growth in them. Your presence in their life created a desire to expand. That's the reciprocal beauty of this. They're learning your language, and in doing so, they're becoming more fluent in love itself. The skills they're developing with you, attention, adaptation, intentionality, these will serve them in every relationship they have. But right now, you're the teacher they chose. You're the person they're doing this work for. What's one way someone has recently loved you in your specific language? Share if you're comfortable. Your story might encourage someone else. Let me also address something important. This doesn't mean you never have to communicate your needs. Learning your love language doesn't make them psychic. There will still be moments where you need to say, "Hey, I need this specific thing right now," or, "That didn't quite land for me, can we try this instead?" And a mature person who's genuinely committed to loving you well will receive that feedback without defensiveness. In fact, their response to your continued communication will tell you everything. Do they get frustrated that they're not automatically perfect at this? Or do they appreciate the guidance as an act of partnership? Do they treat your needs as burdens? Or as invitations to love you better? Someone who's really learning your language sees your feedback as valuable information, not criticism. They want to get better at reaching you. They're not looking for a trophy for basic effort, they're looking to actually connect with you deeply. And that's the point of all this. Not to be praised for learning. Not to get credit for doing what love requires. But to actually close the gap between their intention to love you and your experience of feeling loved. To make sure that what they're giving is actually what you're receiving. The distance between those two things, what someone means to give and what you actually feel, that's where so many relationships struggle. But this person is actively working to eliminate that distance. They're building a bridge between their heart and yours, and they're making sure it's sturdy enough to carry real connection. Don't miss the significance of this moment. Don't let cynicism or past hurt convince you that this isn't real or won't last. Wisdom isn't about assuming the worst. Wisdom is about recognizing when something genuine is unfolding and giving it room to grow. Hold on, what I'm about to share next will shift how you understand what this all means for your future together. This goes beyond just feeling loved right now. This is about what's being built. Here's the revelation I need you to receive: when someone learns your love language, they're not just improving your present experience, they're fundamentally changing the trajectory of what's possible between you. Think about the long-term implications of what's happening. You're building a foundation where both people are committed to actually understanding each other. Where love isn't just a feeling that comes and goes based on chemistry or convenience, but a skill that's being practiced and refined. Where the relationship has a feedback loop of attention and response that keeps deepening over time. This is how lasting love is actually built. Not through finding someone who automatically knows everything about you, but through choosing someone who's willing to learn. Not through perfect compatibility from day one, but through consistent commitment to closing the gap between you. Most relationships plateau. They reach a certain level of understanding and intimacy, and then they coast there. Sometimes for years. Sometimes forever. But what you're experiencing is different. You're in a relationship that's actively evolving. That has growth built into its DNA. And this matters more than you might realize. Because relationships don't fail because people stop having feelings. They fail because people stop doing the work. They fail when someone decides that comfort is more important than connection. When someone stops paying attention. When someone treats their partner like they're a finished puzzle they've already solved instead of a mystery that keeps revealing new layers. But this person? They're still studying you. Still curious about you. Still adjusting to you. And that curiosity, that willingness to keep learning, that's what keeps love alive across decades. Let me show you what this could look like 5 years from now if this pattern continues. You're going through something difficult, a loss, a career setback, a health crisis, something that shakes you. And instead of them being confused about how to support you, instead of them offering generic comfort that doesn't quite reach you, they know. They know exactly how to speak to your heart in that moment because they've spent years learning your language. They know whether you need words or silence, whether you need them to take action or just hold space, whether you need reassurance or distraction. That's the compounding return of this investment they're making now. Every moment they spend learning you now is a deposit into a future where you feel deeply known and completely loved, even in your hardest moments. And it works both ways. Because as they learn your language, you're learning theirs too. You're understanding what makes them feel valued and appreciated. You're discovering how to reach their heart. This isn't one person doing all the work, it's two people committed to the mutual project of truly knowing each other. That's what mature love looks like. Not perfect understanding, but persistent effort. Not effortless compatibility, but chosen devotion. Now, I want to address what this means about their feelings for you, because this is where some of you might need reassurance. If you've been wondering whether they're the one, or whether this is going somewhere serious or whether they're as invested as you are, their willingness to learn your love language is giving you the answer. People don't do this level of internal work for casual connections. They don't reshape their instincts for someone they're not serious about. They don't invest this kind of attention into learning someone they plan to leave. This behavior is a declaration, whether they've explicitly said it or not: you matter to me enough that I'm willing to change for you. And yes, I said change. Not become someone else, but change. Because love, real love, does change us. It makes us more flexible. More humble. More generous. More patient. It calls us to grow beyond our natural limitations and comfort zones. The person who refuses to change in any way for a relationship is the person who isn't truly available for partnership. But this person? They're showing you through their actions that they're all in. They're demonstrating their commitment not through words or promises, but through the daily choice to love you better than they did yesterday. If someone's effort to learn your language has shown you they're serious about you, just type, "I see it now," in the comments. There's also a spiritual dimension to this that we need to talk about. When someone learns to love you in your language, there's a recognition happening that goes beyond personality preferences. They're acknowledging that you're not wrong for needing what you need. That your way of receiving love is valid, worthy of respect, deserving of effort. In a world that often makes us feel like we're too much or not enough, like our needs are inconvenient or our hearts are too complicated, this person is saying the opposite. They're saying, your complexity is not a problem to solve. It's a landscape to explore. Your needs are not burdens to endure. They're invitations to know you better. That kind of acceptance, that kind of honoring of who you actually are rather than who someone wishes you were, that's sacred. That's the kind of love that heals old wounds. That makes you believe you're worthy of good things. That helps you trust that you're not asking for too much by wanting to feel loved in the ways that actually speak to you. And here's what I want you to understand about the transformation happening in them: they're not just learning your language for your sake. They're evolving as a person. The humility required to admit, "I don't know how to love this person perfectly, but I'm going to learn," that humility is making them better. The empathy required to put themselves in your shoes and imagine what would make you feel most loved, that empathy is expanding their heart. The consistency required to keep showing up in these new ways even when it's not easy, that consistency is building their character. So yes, they're doing this for you. But they're also becoming someone more capable of deep love. Someone more emotionally intelligent. Someone more relationally skilled. And you're the catalyst for that growth. Never underestimate the power of inspiring someone to grow. That's not manipulation. That's not pressure. That's simply what happens when your authentic self calls someone into their potential. When your presence in someone's life makes them want to be better, not out of shame but out of aspiration, that's one of the most beautiful dynamics in human connection. Third super thanks moment: if this content is speaking to your soul and you're able to support this work, I'm deeply grateful. It makes these deep dives possible. But your presence here matters regardless. Now here's where this gets really interesting: as they learn your love language, they're also discovering things about themselves. Maybe they're realizing they have more capacity for verbal expression than they thought. Maybe they're finding that acts of service actually feel good when they're for someone they care about. Maybe they're learning that physical affection can be meaningful rather than just physical. They're not just adapting to you, they're expanding their own emotional range. And that expansion is permanent. Even if, and this is important to consider, this relationship were to end, they would carry these new capacities forward. They'd be more fluent in the language of love for everyone they encounter. But more importantly for the present moment, these changes in them are signs of deepening attachment. Human beings don't rewire their habits for people they could easily walk away from. We reserve this level of effort for people who have become important to our sense of home, our definition of happiness, our vision of the future. So when you're lying awake at night wondering if they feel what you feel, if they're as invested as you are, if this is real, remember what you're witnessing during the day. Remember the adjustments. Remember the attention. Remember the effort. Those are your answers. Love isn't primarily a feeling. It's a practice. And they're practicing loving you in the ways that actually reach you. That's not infatuation. That's devotion. That's not temporary. That's the foundation of something that can last. What you do with this matters. How you respond to their effort will shape what comes next. Let's talk about that now, because there's a way to honor this that will deepen what you're building together. So what do you do with this? How do you respond to someone who's making this kind of effort to reach your heart? Because your response matters, it will either encourage them to go deeper or create doubt about whether it's worth it. First principle, acknowledge the effort explicitly. Don't assume they know you've noticed. Don't take for granted that they can read your appreciation in your eyes or your smile. Use your words. Tell them specifically what you've observed and how it affects you. Not just, "Thank you for being thoughtful," but, "I've noticed how you've been remembering the little things I mention, and it makes me feel so seen. That matters to me more than you might realize." Not just, "I love you," but, "The way you've been showing up for me lately, it's like you really understand what makes me feel loved, and I don't take that for granted. Thank you for paying attention." When you name what you see, you're doing several things. You're validating their effort. You're showing them that the changes they're making are landing. You're giving them concrete feedback about what's working. And you're encouraging them to continue because they can see it makes a difference. People need to know their effort isn't invisible. That it's noticed, valued, appreciated. Otherwise, over time, they may wonder if it matters or if you even care. Second principle, reciprocate the learning. This can't be one-sided forever. If they're learning your language, you need to be learning theirs. Ask them directly, "How do you most feel loved? What makes you feel appreciated? What do I do that really reaches you?" And then, this is crucial, actually implement what they tell you. Don't just collect the information. Act on it. Start speaking their language too, even if it doesn't come naturally to you at first. Because here's the thing, they're showing you what real partnership looks like. They're modeling what it means to move beyond your comfort zone for someone you love. The greatest honor you can give them is to follow that example. To stretch for them the way they're stretching for you. This creates a beautiful cycle. They learn your language, you learn theirs, you both feel more understood, more valued, more connected. And that connection becomes the foundation for navigating everything else life throws at you. Third principle, create safety for imperfection. They're learning. That means they're going to get it wrong sometimes. They're going to speak your language with an accent at first. They might try something that doesn't quite land, or misread what you need in a specific moment, or revert to old patterns when they're stressed or distracted. Don't punish the learning curve. Don't make them feel like they're failing when they're actually trying. Respond with patience and grace, the way you'd want them to respond to you when you're figuring things out. "I appreciate what you were going for there. For next time, what would work even better for me is..." Give them permission to be imperfect while they're growing. Because if you create an environment where mistakes feel catastrophic, they'll stop risking. They'll either shut down or start playing it safe, and you'll lose the very thing you're celebrating, their willingness to stretch. Fourth principle, trust the process, not just the performance. There will be moments when they slip back into old patterns. When they forget. When they're tired or overwhelmed and default to their natural way of operating rather than the adjusted way they're learning. Don't interpret these moments as proof that the changes aren't real. Don't let one forgetful day erase 3 weeks of consistent effort. See the trajectory, not just the individual data points. Growth isn't linear. Learning isn't constant. There will be good days and rough days. What matters is the overall direction, the long-term pattern, the commitment underneath the fluctuations. Type a word of encouragement in the comments for anyone who's learning to love someone in their language. What would you say to them? Fifth principle, maintain your own boundaries while celebrating their growth. Just because someone is learning your love language doesn't mean you abandon your discernment. You can appreciate the effort while still paying attention to whether the relationship as a whole is healthy, reciprocal, and aligned with your values. Learning your love language is beautiful, but it's not enough by itself. There still needs to be respect, honesty, mutual support, shared values, and healthy communication. Don't let the excitement of being loved well in this one area blind you to problems in other areas. A person can be great at speaking your love language and still be wrong for you in other fundamental ways. So yes, celebrate this. Receive it. Appreciate it. But keep your eyes open to the full picture of who they are and what this relationship is giving you. Sixth principle, let yourself fully receive it. This might be the hardest one. If you're used to being skeptical, if you've trained yourself not to trust good things, if you're always waiting for people to disappoint you, this is your chance to practice a different response. Let their love in. Let yourself believe that someone can choose to grow for you. Let yourself trust that this effort is real, even though it might not last forever, even though you can't predict the future, even though there are no guarantees. Cynicism feels protective, but it's also isolating. It keeps you from experiencing the fullness of what's available to you. And right now, what's available is someone who's actively trying to speak your heart's language. Don't let fear rob you of the experience of being loved this way. You can be wise and open at the same time. You can be discerning and receptive. You can protect yourself without shutting down. Seventh principle, share your own growth. As you watch them stretch for you, let them see you stretching too. Not just in learning their love language, but in other areas of your life and character. Let them see that their effort inspires you to be better. When we love someone who's actively growing, it calls us into our own evolution. Let that happen. Don't stay static while they're transforming. Grow alongside them. Challenge yourself in the ways you're asking them to challenge themselves. This creates partnership rather than one person doing all the changing. It creates mutual respect and admiration. It builds a relationship where both people are committed to becoming better versions of themselves, both individually and together. Finally, eighth principle, hold space for the sacred in this. Don't reduce what's happening to just a nice thing someone is doing. Recognize it for what it is, an act of devotion. A choice to move beyond selfishness into generosity. A willingness to be uncomfortable for the sake of connection. A demonstration of how much you matter to them. There's something holy about being loved this way. About being seen clearly enough that someone understands what speaks to your heart, and then being valued enough that they actually do it. Let that land. Let yourself feel the weight of being chosen like this. Let it remind you that you're worthy of effort, worthy of attention, worthy of someone reshaping their instincts to reach you better. This is how love is supposed to work. Not effortless, but intentional. Not perfect, but committed. Not static, but evolving. And you're experiencing it right now. With all its awkwardness and beauty and vulnerability and growth. You're experiencing what it feels like when someone decides you're worth learning. Let's bring this home now. Because there's one more thing you need to understand about what this means and where it's taking you. You know what's remarkable? We started this conversation talking about someone learning your love language, but what we're really talking about is what happens when someone decides that truly knowing you is worth whatever it costs them in comfort. That's not common. That's not something you find every day or in every connection. That's the kind of devotion that most people spend their whole lives hoping for, and you're watching it unfold in real time. So here's what I want to leave you with. This person who's learning to speak directly to your heart is showing you something that goes beyond relationship advice or communication tips. They're showing you what it looks like when someone loves you not in spite of your complexity but because they've decided your complexity is worth engaging with. You're not too much. You never were. You were just with people who weren't willing to expand to meet you. But this person, they're expanding. They're stretching. They're growing. And they're doing it because something in them recognized that you're worth it. That recognition changes everything. It changes how you see yourself. It changes what you believe is possible in relationships. It changes your standard for how you deserve to be treated. Because once you've experienced being loved in your language by someone who chose to learn it, you can never again accept less. You'll know the difference between someone who loves you in their way versus someone who loves you in your way. And listen, this journey you're on together, it's not finished. They're still learning. You're still learning. The relationship is still growing. There will be moments of frustration when communication breaks down. Moments when you wonder if you're truly compatible. Moments when the effort feels hard for both of you. But in those moments, remember this, they chose to learn your language once. That means they can choose it again. That means when things get difficult, you have evidence that they're capable of adjustment, humility, growth. You have proof that they value connection with you more than they value their own comfort. That's your foundation. Build on it. Protect it. Honor it. And keep choosing each other through the messy, beautiful process of becoming people who know how to love each other well. The way they're changing for you. It's not going to stop leaving you speechless. Because as they continue to learn you, as they discover new layers of what speaks to your heart, new ways to reach you, new expressions of love that land perfectly, you're going to keep experiencing these moments of wonder. These, how did they know, moments. These, I've never felt so understood, moments. And each time it happens, it will confirm what's becoming undeniable: this is someone who sees you. Who values you. Who's committed to you. Not just in words or feelings, but in the daily practice of learning how to love you better. If this video met you exactly where you are, if it spoke to something you've been experiencing but couldn't quite articulate, drop one more heart in the comments. Let's celebrate together what's unfolding in your life. I want you to walk away from this conversation with a deep sense of gratitude, not just for them, but for yourself too. Because you had to be brave enough to show them who you are. You had to be vulnerable enough to let them see what you need. You had to be patient enough to give them space to learn. And you had to be open enough to receive their efforts instead of letting skepticism shut them out. You participated in creating this. You made space for someone to love you well. That took courage. That took trust. That took a willingness to risk being disappointed again for the possibility of being truly known. And look what happened, you found someone willing to meet you there. Someone willing to do the work. Someone who decided that speaking your heart's language was worth the effort. That's not just luck. That's also about who you are and what you've called forth. Never forget that. You didn't just passively receive this, you co-created it by being someone worth learning, by being worth the effort, by being authentically yourself in ways that invited someone to truly know you. So here's my blessing for you as we close: may you continue to have the courage to be known. May you continue to create space for someone to love you in your language. May you continue to appreciate the effort without taking it for granted. May you continue to reciprocate the learning with your own willingness to stretch. And may you continue to trust that you're worthy of exactly this kind of devotion, today, tomorrow, and in every season that's coming. What's happening between you isn't a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. It's two people choosing each other and doing the work that choice requires. It's messy and beautiful and vulnerable and strong all at once. It's exactly what love is supposed to be when it's built on a foundation of mutual effort, attention, and respect. And the way they're changing for you. The way they're learning your language, speaking directly to your heart, showing up in the ways that matter most to you. That's just the beginning. Because when someone commits to learning you, there's no end to how deep that knowledge can go. There's no limit to how well they can learn to love you. There's only more understanding, more connection, more of what you're already experiencing. So receive it fully. Celebrate it openly. Honor it daily. And trust that what you're building together has the foundation to last, because it's not built on perfection or effortless compatibility. It's built on choice. On effort. On the daily decision to keep learning each other, keep speaking each other's languages, keep showing up even when it's not easy. That's the kind of love that endures. That's the kind of connection that deepens with time instead of fading. That's what you're experiencing right now. And yes, it will leave you speechless. Again and again. As you continue to discover just how committed they are to knowing you. To reaching you. To loving you not in some generic way, but in the specific, particular, customized way that speaks directly to who you actually are. You're not dreaming. This is real. And it's yours. Cherish it. Protect it. And let yourself be absolutely amazed by it, because someone loving you this intentionally, this attentively, this devotedly. That's worth being speechless over. That's worth celebrating. That's worth every ounce of vulnerability it took to get here. Welcome to being loved in your language. Welcome to being truly known. Welcome to the kind of connection you always hoped was possible. It is possible. And you're living it.